Welcome to Dear Fans. Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the brightly lit stage of The View. The applause from the studio audience, polite but measured, the sleek black floors gleamed under the overhead lights, and the massive digital backdrop pulsed with the show's signature orange and blue. She had been here before, not we exactly, but in places like it, places where the walls were lined with carefully curated books, where the air smelled of expensive perfume and network money, where the people sitting across from her believed deep down that they were the ones in control. The co-host sat in a semicircle, poised like a firing squad, Whoopi Goldberg in the center, her expression unreadable behind her tinted glasses, Joy Behar already shifting in her seat, fingers tapping lightly against the cue cards in her lap, Sunny, tin lips pursed, glancing down at the neatly typed questions on the table, the others waiting, watching. The crowd settled, the music faded, a brief beat of silence, then Whoopi leaned forward, hands folded, voice smooth. Welcome to The View, Karoline. Karoline crossed her legs, clasped her hands in her lap, happy to be here. Alive, she could feel it already, the weight of the room pressing and the barely concealed skepticism humming beneath the surface. This wasn't an interview, it was a test, a spectacle, a chance for them to make an example of her. She had no intention of making it easy. The cameras rolled, the stage lights burned, and the dance began. Whoopi Goldberg adjusted her glasses, shifting slightly in her chair, a subtle movement, but Karoline caught it, a signal. The first shot was coming. Joy Bear leaned forward, cue cards tapping against the table. Let's get right into it. Her voice was light, almost casual, but her eyes were sharp. You represent Donald Trump's campaign. And well, she gave a small chuckle, shaking her head. That's got to be a full-time job, cleaning up his mess. The audience laughed, predictable, rehearsed. Karoline waited for it to die down before she responded, defending policies. That work isn't cleaning up a mess, she said, voice calm, controlled. It's called leadership. Joy smirked, flipping a card. Right, leadership. She tilted her head. Is that what you'd call trying to overturn an election? A murmur rippled through the audience. Karoline barely blinked. Is that what you'd call questioning election integrity? Joy's smile tightened. Whoopi exhaled, leaning back in her chair. Come on, Karoline, you know what happened on January 6th. Karoline met her gaze. I do. A pause. I also know that challenging election results isn't new. Hillary Clinton called Trump's 2016 win illegitimate. Stacey Abrams refused to concede in Georgia. Did you hold them to the same standard? Whoopi frowned. That's different. Why? A silence, brief but heavy. Sunny Hostin cut in, flipping through her notes. Let's talk about immigration. Her voice was crisp. Practiced. Your campaign criticizes Biden for using taxpayer money on migrant housing, but Trump did the same thing in 2019. Why is it wrong now but not then? A trap. Karoline saw it coming. The difference, she said smoothly, is that Trump was fixing a crisis. Biden is funding one. The audience shifted, a few heads nodded, others bristled. Sunny arched an eyebrow. Fixing you means separating families, caging children. Karoline turned slightly in her chair. Do you know why children were in detention centers? Sunny opened her mouth, but Karoline kept going. Because their parents broke the law. A hush fell over the set. That's not cruelty, Karoline continued. That's consequence. Biden, on the other hand, invites illegal crossings. He doesn't just allow it, he rewards it. Free housing, free health care, free everything. She let the words hang. Do you know what that does? No one answered. It encourages more crossings, more traffickers, more fentanyl in our cities. She looked at the audience now. More crime in your neighborhoods. A stir. Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably, clearing her throat. So, just to be clear, you support mass deportation? Karoline tilted her head. I support enforcing the law. Sarah hesitated. Which means if you break into someone's house, do they let you stay? More silence. Joy Bear crossed her arms. That's a pretty heartless way to look at it. Karoline's expression didn't change. Well, what's heartless is letting criminals flood our borders. What's heartless is letting kids drown in the Rio Grande because they were promised in open door. The audience murmured, some nods, some crossed arms. Whoopi glanced at the producers off stage, a signal the conversation needed to shift. She turned back, her voice measured. All right, Leighton, talk about women's rights here. It was you work for a man who wants to ban abortion nationwide, Whoopi said, folding her hand. Do you really think the government should control women's bodies? Karoline didn't flinch. I think the government should protect life. WB blinked. Even in cases of rape? A murmur, a low hum of tension. Karoline met her gaze. Rape is evil, so is punishing an innocent child for it. The air in the studio grew tight. Sunny leaned in, voice quieter. Now you don't think that's extreme? Karoline exhaled. I think taking a life is extreme. No one spoke. Joy shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable with the silence. All right, so let's talk about something you do. Support Trump's economy? Karoline let the pivot happen. Trump built a booming economy. She said gas was cheap, inflation was low, people could afford groceries without checking their bank accounts, twice Joy waved a hand, oh come. On wrecked the economy, Karoline didn't smile, Biden wrecked the economy, another murmur. Sunny shook her head, you don't think global events had anything to do with it? Karoline leaned forward slightly. Biden inherited a recovering economy and made it worse. He shut down pipelines, printed money like it was monopoly cash, and let gas prices skyrocket. That wasn't that was incompetence. Whoopi took a slow breath, tapping her fingers against the table. You really believe Trump is the answer? Karoline's eyes were steady. I believe America was better under Trump, she said simply. Whoopi let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. Girl, you really drank the Kool-Aid. Karoline's lips curved slightly. No, Whoopi, I just see the facts. The tension in the studio was thick. The audience didn't know how to react. Some nodded, some whispered. Joy glanced at the producers, another signal, time to wrap. Well, this has been enlightening, she said, her tone clipped. Karoline didn't move. WB looked into the camera. We be right back. The screen faded to black, but the battle was already won. The commercial breaks stretched longer than usual on set. The co-hosts murmured amongst themselves, their voices low but sharp. Karoline sat still, hands folded neatly in her lap. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down not just on her but on them. They had expected resistance, but not like this. A producer approached, headset tilted, speaking quietly into Whoopi's ear. She nodded, then glanced at the other women, a silent understanding passing between them. This wasn't going the way they had planned. The usual rhythm of The View, where a conservative guest was cornered, flustered, and ultimately drowned out, wasn't happening. Karoline wasn't flustered. She wasn't playing defense. She was winning. The cameras rolled back. Whoopi adjusted her glasses, forcing a smile. Welcome back to The View, she said. We're here with Karoline Leavitt, spokesperson for the Trump 2024 campaign. Her tone had shifted, less playful, more controlled. There was no room left for jabs or interruptions. She was moving to containment. Joy cleared her throat. Karoline, before we wrap this up, I have to ask, do you really believe everything you just said? Karoline didn't hesitate. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Joy scoffed, shaking her head. I don't get it. You're young, you're smart, you could stand for anything. She waved a hand. Was the question wasn't an attack. Not this time, it was genuine. Karoline looked around the table. Because I watched what happened when my generation was promised easy answers. I watched people my age get crushed by student debt after being told a useless degree would change their lives. I watched families struggle while the people in charge told them the economy was fine. I watched cities burn while politicians knelt instead of leading. The audience was silent. I don't believe in easy answers, she continued. I believe in results. Trump got results, and I believe he will again. Joy shook her head, lips pressed tight. There was nothing left to say. Whoopi sighed, already looking toward the camera. All right, Karoline, I appreciate you being here. We'll see how things play out next year. Karoline simply nodded. We will. The credits rolled. The music played. She stood as the lights dimmed, smoothing her blazer. As producers swarmed the table, the co-hosts avoided her gaze, busying themselves with coffee cups and earpieces, their energy shifting from attack mode to damage control. As she walked toward the exit, a voice stopped her. You didn't crack. She turned. Sarah Hannes, arms crossed, head tilted, watching her with something like curiosity. Karoline smiled slightly. Not my first time, Sarah exhaled, shaking her head. Yeah, I can tell. No more words, just an understanding. Outside, the New York air was crisp, electric, with the hum of the city. Karoline pulled out her phone. The notifications were already pouring, and clips of the interview were spreading. Reactions were forming. Some would call her brave, some would call her dangerous, some would call her every name they could think of. It didn't matter. She had gone into the lion's den. She had held her ground, and she had walked out stronger. Like this video and subscribe this channel. Thank you.